Welcome back into the GSMC Sports Podcast as we just finished recapping the Thursday Night Football matchup between the Cowboys and the Giants. And now I want to look ahead here to the remainder of the Week 4 slate in the NFL and talk about the biggest games and biggest moments specifically that could potentially answer some questions for NFL fans this weekend. And one of the probably the number one game that I have circled at this point, at least in the early slate, is how for real are the Vikings at this point, and can they win the NFC North? Because I would hesitate to say that the Vikings are more of a Super Bowl contender than the Packers, but we're now getting to a point here where the Vikings, off to their 3-0 start, now have a chance to sort of roll into Lambeau and make they've already made statements, so it's unfair of me really to say, how legitimate are they? But it's more so about, is this a team that can actually win the division? It's been an excellent start so far. Wins against San Francisco and Houston are massive for their resume, but at the end of the day, this is a very competitive NFC North division, and if they can sort of strike while the iron's hot, while they're riding all of this momentum, and while Jordan Love's status is still a little bit to be determined. Now, it seems like, especially just looking at the betting line for this game, the Packers favored by 3, that would sort of indicate that it sounds like Jordan Love is going to play in this game, which lines up with the timeline as well that we were sort of first given when he went down in that injury, with the injury in that game against the Eagles. So it would sort of make sense that Jordan Love is going to play in this game. But that being said, I have a hard time imagining he is going to be at his sharpest. And the Vikings, if you can say one thing about what this Vikings team has been these past couple of years, it is an extremely aggressive defense. And that is under the control of Brian Flores, who, again, sort of is now all of a sudden maybe making a name for pushing himself back into head coaching candidacy this upcoming offseason. I'm sure he'll get at least a couple of interviews, and this is a very talented Vikings defense at this point. Again, I talked about this yesterday on the show. I do feel like Brian Flores deserves a ton of credit for being able to have this level of success with the Vikings defense these past couple of years. I would even more so specifically look at last season in comparison to this year, because I just don't think that people are all that aware of how talented this group is. Now, what I would definitely like to see them have a little bit more of known substances in the secondary, but you look in that front seven with the likes of a Jonathan Grenard and Andrew Van Ginkel, a Blake Cashman, all of these guys that they brought in. Ivan Pace is going to be out for this game, so that's definitely a tough loss for them, but they have some legitimate playmakers on their defense now, and specifically in that front seven where they can bring the heat. And I think that they are going to do so against the Packers this upcoming weekend. And ultimately for the Vikings, like I mentioned, it's not like I view them as a true Super Bowl contender at this point, but it gets a ton easier if they're able to play at home in their dome, especially for the sake of Sam Darnold, who's been great up to this point in the year, but I think it's fair to have some reservations about how great actually is he now. And I think that ultimately, they probably don't view themselves as a Cinderella run, and it will be hard to if they are able to even host one playoff game. Again, NFC North, very tough situation to sort of work your way out of, but I do think that this is a situation for the Vikings where it's a golden opportunity for them to make a statement to that division and continue to gain the high ground moving forward this year in regards to trying to take home a surprise division title. Looking elsewhere in the NFC, after an offensive dud last week, are we going to look at the first 2 weeks of the season of Saints football as an anomaly or as a sign for things to come? Like I mentioned, last week against the Eagles, it was very ugly overall. And I do feel like this is a situation where, especially after losing their starting center, Eric McCoy, that is a name that, not a household name by any means, but is a very important loss to this Saints team that is very reliant on the run game and the play action coming out of that. That the Saints now, they're going to have a game against a tough division rival in the Falcons and a good defense. And I think that we all sort of understood it's not like we can expect 40 points a game out of this Saints team. But last year, this is kind of what they were, is they would have moments of brilliance. Then when things sort of got off script and they were sort of not given quite as easy of a path, Derek Carr kind of turned more so into the Derek Carr that we've seen for the majority of the past few seasons. And I'm rooting for him. I think that he has a lot of talent, but the limitations with him are definitely at least in the back of the minds, I think, of the majority of NFL fans. And this is a week where, listen, if they come out and do play another low-scoring game against the Falcons, it's not like it means that the Saints can never, be back to being a high-scoring team. But this is a situation, we were having conversations of, can this offense be elite, one of the top tiers in the NFL? And I am a lot more skeptical on it after last week, after the injury to McCoy, seeing the limitations of Carr and somebody like Rashid Shaheed as well, who was sort of becoming a darling once again, as he does every once in a while when he does, rip off these deep touchdowns that seem to come sporadically through the past couple years. But ultimately, is the Saints offense to be taken seriously on a week-to-week basis, or were they just more a product of their schedule early on? That's something that I am definitely keeping my eye on. Another game here, are the Chiefs done messing around? Because this is a situation where the past few weeks, listen, everybody's discourse around the Chiefs seems to be in one of two places. The Chiefs are the Chiefs that they have been the past couple years, that they are still the best team in the NFL, and everybody else is just sort of, rummaging for their shot to take down the champs. Or there's this other camp now disbelieving in the Chiefs and talking about, they only won because of the refs. They haven't necessarily won a game handedly yet. Both sides have some sort of legitimacy to it. This upcoming week, I think we can get more of a definitive answer. Now, because the Chiefs played three good teams tough in the Ravens, the Bengals, and the Falcons. I know what the records say for those three teams, that none of them have a winning record at this point, and the Bengals are winless even to add on to that. I do still think that those are three quality wins for the Chiefs. Now, if you want to dispute me on it, I don't think that, we're just going to see eye to eye on that, but that's not even important. This is a game against the Chargers that are ravished with injuries. You look on the offensive side of the ball, I think it's very unlikely that Justin Herbert is going to be able to play in this game, dealing with that high ankle sprain, not to mention the fact that both of his starting offensive tackles in Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt are going to be out for the next couple weeks. That I'm sure Jim Harbaugh is chomping at the bit to be able to sort of show the Chiefs that the Chargers aren't going to be the pushovers that they have been in recent years. I just don't think that this is going to be the week for them. Chiefs are currently 7-point favorites, and this is a situation where I think that they have to win convincingly. You look on the defensive side of the ball as well. Joey Bosa, I don't know if we have an exact update on his status for the game, but I believe that I saw he was questionable. Derwin James, their star safety, he is now suspended for a game due to a repeatedly going against NFL rules. I think it's specifically in regards to late hits to the head, things along those lines, but he's going to be out with this game. Bosa is currently listed as questionable, so we're not sure there yet. Junior Colson, one of the top linebackers for the Chargers, also questionable for this game. So I just think that there is so much with this Chargers team that they are just not going to be ready to go this week from a competitive standpoint. And it is a divisional game. We just talked about, the idea of divisional games in that Cowboys and Giants matchup. But I think that this is a situation where you can start to have real concerns with the Chiefs if they don't convincingly win this game. because I think that even fully healthy, I do believe that the Chiefs are significantly a better team at this point. The Chargers are going to be a well-coached team that's going to keep themselves alive in a number of games and going to stay competitive. But Kansas City is far better, and they should be able to handle business here. If they don't, then we might have some real problems on our hands if you are in Chiefs Nation. And then the last game, just going to highlight it for the sake that it is going to be an excellent game. Bills versus Ravens on Sunday Night Football. The way that I look at this game, the Bills defense has been able to really overachieve up to this point, considering all of the losses that they've had on defense. This is going to be a game where they are going to be put to the test because Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry last week, were able to sort of muster up the run game necessary to run for over 270 yards against the Cowboys. Now, that is a Cowboys problem to some degree, of course, the fact that they are one of the worst rush defenses in the NFL, but they actually just held fine for themselves against the Giants last night. And the Bills, on the other hand, are going to be without both of their starting linebackers. Got some positive news in regards to Terrell Bernard, who is working his way back, but I still don't think is going to be available to play in this game. So this is a situation where I think that the Bills are really going to be put to the test in terms of, is this early success on the defense sustainable? Or eventually, are the combination of all of these injuries and losses going to catch up with them? So we are going to, let me know what your thoughts are in the comments section. We're going to be continuing on with the preview of games this weekend, and we are going to be handing out our 5 best bets of the weekend. But before we do so, we have to take a quick break. Do not go anywhere. We will be right back.